Hello, let's chat. Let's talk about you being able to buy a house in this crazy housing market that's going on today. Because a lot of people, houses are too expensive, mortgage rates are too expensive, there's no way I can afford a home in today's, you know, economy, in today's market with the wages that I'm making, and it's just hopeless today, and there's no way I'm ever going to be able to get ahead. So let's chat about that. I'm going to share with you what we've done on our journey, and hopefully that will help you figure out how you can incorporate those thoughts into your journey. So, welcome to Goose Pond Hideout. I'm Rob, and I'm standing here in the front yard of our homestead that we purchased with little to no money and no income, and I'm going to share that journey with you. So, when I first got out of college, I lived in a first floor of an old house. The owner had a first floor apartment and a second floor apartment. And we had a living room, a kitchen, and the little bathroom was off the kitchen, and there were 2 bedrooms. And 3 of us lived like that. And we used to joke in the wintertime, this was way up in Wisconsin, that you had to check to make sure there wasn't ice in the toilet before you went to the bathroom in the morning when you got up. And that's serious. The wind would blow in through the windows. We'd stick socks in the windows and stuff like that to to cut down on the breeze blowing through. But it was cheap. We were right out of college, and it was just a nice place. Well, it wasn't a nice place. It was an affordable place for us to stay. And this is why it's called Goose Pond Hideout. They're heading over to the pond. So, that's the kinds of things you have to think about. Having a really old car so you don't have any kind of a payment, and saving up, living below your means and saving up. Because the thing that you have to say to yourself is, how bad do I want it? That's what you're going to say. How bad do you want it? But of course, you're going to be saying, how bad do I want it? And I suggest printing that out and sticking it on the mirror in the bathroom or the refrigerator in the kitchen or whatever. So every day you can see that and you can say to yourself, how bad do I really want it? How bad do I want a house? And, you might have to do something like live with your parents. The old living in the basement kind of thing. Living in a condo, an apartment, an old house with several other people, so that you're not paying much money, so that you can save up. Because you have to have money. You can't do anything in this country broke. You've got to have some sort of funds available. And the only way you're going to get that is to, save it up. Because my ultimate goal is for you to be able to retire early, if you will, to get out of that hamster wheel system of going to work, coming home, eating, sleeping, going to work, coming home, eating, sleeping, and that just cycle, and just, you're spending all that you're making to, survive. And I remember, back when I was younger, I don't know how many times I said to myself, if I could just make $100 more a month, man, I'll be set. And then pretty soon it's like, if I could just make $100 more a month, I'd be pretty set. And you keep making more and more, but your lifestyle just changes with it. You're wearing nicer clothes, you're buying nicer cars, you're living in nicer homes, apartments, whatever, and you're just trapped in that hamster wheel. And I was just looking online a little while ago, and obviously prices range all over the place, and it depends on where you are in the country, but like an apartment now is like $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Well, there's no way you're ever going to get ahead. There's no way you're ever going to get out of that hamster wheel if you're paying $1,500, $2,000 a month, for an apartment, and you're putting down a security deposit, and you probably still have to pay your utilities, and you've got your internet service, and all these auto pay monthly things that just coming out of your bank account. And that's just, there's no way you're ever going to get ahead. So how bad do I want it? And it's a technique that I used back before technology and that, and again in the early days, is I used cash. I would, quote, cash my check, and I had an envelope for groceries and an envelope for utilities and an envelope, for the rent, an envelope for the car expenses, gasoline and things. And I had envelopes, and I put cash in each envelope, and that was the money that I had to spend, on that thing every month. And of course, you save first. Now, today, I'll admit, cash in envelopes is going to be a challenge because so many things, auto insurance, your satellite, internet, your TV, cable, whatever you have, internet service. So many things today you've got to auto pay them or they won't even let you sign up for it. So, that's going to be an issue. But that is part of the problem, is people don't realize where their money's going. They don't get a check that they go to the bank in cash, and then they don't spend, their cash on all the things that, they need during the month. Your check is just direct deposited into your account, and then everything is just auto sucked out of it. And even when you buy things, you use that little plastic card, and now you can even just use your phone, tap and go and all that kind of thing. And I remember it wasn't the last time we went to Rural King, but we buy our chicken feed and our dog food and get some treats and, their licorice or cookies or something like that. They have the old-fashioned snacks there. But we went to Rural King, and I picked up the feed and the things that I needed, and I was, kind of in a hurry, and got to the checkout, and they were having a little bit of trouble with the registers, and I think that somebody was doing like a return or something like that, and the checkout person rang up all my stuff, and I stuck my card into the machine and put my PIN number in there and approved, and she gave me the receipt, and I headed out the door. And as I'm going out the door, I looked over at my wife, and I'm like, I have absolutely no idea how much money we just spent. Now, granted, we get the same thing every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, once a month. We usually end up going about every 3 weeks, especially this time of the year. But I always watch it ring up, and make sure if I buy 6 bags of chicken feed that I'm getting charged for 6 bags of chicken feed, and whatever other little things that we're buying. And then I see the total at the bottom, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. And I'm like walking out the door, and I'm like, I have no idea. That could have been $1,000, and I wouldn't even know. So I pulled the receipt out of my pocket as I'm standing in the vestibule between the opening doors, where you come in, and I'm looking at the receipt, making sure that it rang up right. And that's the thing. It's too easy to spend money today. And if you want to get ahead, you've got to live with a bunch of other people in a crummy apartment. You've got to live with your parents. You've got to drive a really old car that has no payment on it, and you get the lowest insurance that you can get, so you're legal. And, all of that. And that's why in 2005, when I said I'm completely jumping out of the hamster wheel, and we sold everything that we had and moved on to the sailboat, we had virtually no expenses then, cell phone, groceries, insurance for the boat, but not many things. And it's a sailboat, so I barely bought, I think I bought diesel fuel like 2 times, 2 times in 9 years for the engine. And it was a very inexpensive way to live life. And then we sold the sailboat so that we could buy this homestead, which brings me to the point of, I went on Zillow last night, and I typed, use whatever service you want, but that's, a typical real estate service on the internet these days. So I went to Zillow, and you got to search. So I went to Kentucky, and I went to Tennessee, and I went to Arkansas, and I clicked on a couple other states, and I put in $40,000 maximum, house from 0 to 40,000. And I wanted it to be a house, and I left the mobile home, modular home, whatever they call it, but I didn't want an apartment or a condo or a duplex, and I didn't want raw land. I wanted it to actually be a place you could live. So 0 to 40,000, and then I put in 1 acre of land. It had to be at least an acre. So you can't be on a city lot, which, if that's what you want to do, but I'm talking about a little bit of retiring and being kind of self-sufficient. And each state had approximately 45 homes for sale. So, that's the thing, is the sailboat that I bought was a fixer-upper. Nothing worked on it. When we bought this homestead, the roof had holes in it. There were squirrels living in the attic. There were raccoons running all over the place. The plumbing was leaking. The electricity was green acres, questionable. You have to turn this off to turn this on. And no insulation in the attic. When you looked in the attic, you could see the drywall between the what is that, roof joists, I guess. I'm not a contractor, but I think those are called joists, right? The ceiling boards. You could see the drywall because all the animals had chewed up all the insulation. But we got it for, little money. We basically got the home for the value of the property, of the 5 acres that it was sitting on. And then I put a new roof on myself, and I redid the plumbing, and I redid the electric, and we blew in insulation. We went to one of them big box stores and bought the compressed bales, and they loan you the machine, and you feed the bales into the machine, and it blows it out through a hose. So, we did it that way and put in new insulation. And I did it, myself, but we were able to buy a home, quote, for cash from, selling the sailboat and having some other money available. We didn't survey the land. It was well marked and with stakes, so that wasn't an issue. We did do the title thing and the insurance and that, title insurance, and had that checked out to make sure it was good. But that's, how we did it. I kept saying, how bad do I want it? And if you want it bad enough, you're going to have to find, because, we have no mortgage, right? We've got no mortgage. We pay homeowners insurance because I don't want to be risky that way. We've got our cell phones, we've got television, we've got internet, we've got our electric bill, which is like $75 a month. And that, and so we can retire early. We can, current now live on Social Security. If you got to pay $2,000 a month for your apartment, and you got hundreds and hundreds of dollars of auto pay bills, you're never ever going to get ahead. So, that's the thing is, you've just got to continually say, how bad do I want it? How, am I willing to drive an old car that might not start in the morning? It might have a flat tire on it that I got to pump up, and, save every nickel that I can, pay the minimum that I can for everything, and cut corners wherever I can, save, so that I can find a fixer-upper place for $30,000 or $40,000 that I can just pay for. Because the other thing, when you're buying a piece of property like that, it's pretty much going to be a cash deal. Because banks, the home loan associations and things like that, they're never going to go for a place like that. They want the traditional, big home sitting on a city lot, and everything's perfect in it. And unless you could buy a $300,000 or $400,000 home, you're not going to get a traditional mortgage, which also motivates the seller then to be accepting of any decent offer. If you say, hey, I got cash as fast as you can close, here's the money, let's do the deal, and they need to get out from under it. Our home was basically abandoned. Again, other than the squirrels and the mice and the raccoons. And the owner was in another state, and he was ready to get rid of it. So it had been for sale for a while. So when we waved a cash offer in his face, he jumped right at it. He didn't even come back with a counter offer. He just said, good, let's accept it. So that's the kind of thing I want you to be thinking about, because I truly want you to be retired early, living the life that you want to live, living where you want to live, with compromising, the things that you want, making the place into what you want. I redid the kitchen. The kitchen cabinets were completely unusable. And I mean, literally, you could not use the kitchen cabinets. You open up the door and it was like, ooh, keep that door closed. So I ripped out all the kitchen cabinets. I went to one of those warehouse places and bought bare wood kitchen cabinets, and I had to paint them all myself and attach them to the wall. I made my own countertop and put that down. I did it all myself, and I saved a bundle of money doing it that way. I mean, it didn't cost, I don't even know, I'd probably guess, I'd be surprised if I spent $1,000 redoing the kitchen, buying everything at a warehouse and doing it all on my own. So that, that's the kind of thing that you got to be thinking about, is being handy and self-sufficient and bargain hunting and living is below your means as much as you can, and keep saying to yourself, how bad do I want it? Because life is short, and I want you to be finding your freedom. Freedom! How bad do you want it?